and uses ever-evolving submission skills to tap the big man out. For Schoonover, he needs to be cognizant about where he is in the cage. If he allows Jones to get close and clinch with him, he will lose this fight. To win, he simply needs to keep this fight standing and work to knock out the submission specialist. You can catch the Ultimate Fighter Heavyweights finale live right here on Rogers Sportsnet this Saturday, the only place to catch the fights in HD.
Straight ahead, in an MMA Connected exclusive, we delve deep into the relationship between the UFC's Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta.
That was probably the only time I ever really got mad at Dana. when he made such a big deal out of it. I'm like, what are you doing? This doesn't make any sense.
That incredible story and more when MMA Connected, presented by UltimateBet.net, continues.
Hi, this is Lorenzo Fertitta.
Hey, this is Dana White from the Ultimate Fighting Championship.
And you're watching MMA Connected,
Canada's #1 MMA show.
And Showdown Joe, I tell you what, my family makes much better Italian food than yours does.
Can you believe that this goofball, Showdown Joe, got nominated for an MMA award? He sucks.
Dana, you just lost my vote. Now, Lorenzo, I know you're a billionaire, but are you willing to put a wager on that? Dana and Lorenzo are the best of friends, business partners, and let's face it, the kings of the MMA world. Together, they have built the UFC into the billion-dollar empire it is today. What's the secret behind their success? A special bond that has blazed the MMA trail for over a decade.
Are you ready? Are you ready? Let's get it on! Come on!
Despite a successful debut in 1993, the Ultimate Fighting Championship stood on shaky ground throughout its early years in the 90s. Mixed martial arts was mocked by many as a fringe sport too violent for the mainstream. By the turn of the century, less than a decade after its inception, the UFC was in big trouble, on the verge of bankruptcy. It was at that time, in 2001, when two hardcore fans of the sport, Dana White and Lorenzo Fertitta, came up with the idea to buy the fledgling organization and save it from extinction.
We had met Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz and a couple of other fighters, and I guess had become groupie, MMA junkies following, the fights and things like that. And then I was actually out of town. Dana called me and said that he had heard that the UFC was going to be purchased by somebody else.
Him and his brother Frank were down in Florida on vacation, and I called him up and said, the UFC's in trouble, man. These guys might be going out of business. I think we could buy this thing. And then a month later, we own the company.
For White and the Fertitta brothers, buying the UFC for a mere $2 million was the easy part. But changing people's perception early on of MMA as a no-holds-barred blood sport, while trying to stop the organization's major financial bleeding, proved to be a much greater challenge, one they would almost lose.
Well, when this thing got started, we jumped in with both feet. We had our ideas and our theories on how we could do this and do that. And we thought the answer, the holy grail for us was getting back on pay-per-view. Once that happened, everything was going to turn around and go back to normal. And it didn't work out that way. It's the complete opposite. Pay-per-view almost put us out of business.
I finally got to the point where I called Dana up one day and I said, hey, you know what, I don't think we can do this anymore. It's just not working. Let's see who we can find to come in and buy this thing. And he went out, made a few phone calls, and came back with some very small numbers. And we were in a position where we were going to have to take a significant loss. I said, before we engage, let me go home and kind of sleep on it and figure out if that's what I want to do. And went home, thought about it, woke up the next morning, called him at 6 in the morning and said, I'm not willing to quit. We're going to figure this thing out.
On this season of The Ultimate Fighter,
the turning point for the UFC came in 2005 with the creation of the Ultimate Fighter reality series, an idea that would prove instrumental in bringing the sport to the mainstream. And while Season 1 finalists Forrest Griffin and Stephan Bonnar were staging arguably the most important fight in UFC history, a fiercely loyal Dana White was being entrusted as the face of the organization and the force behind its newfound success.
They put up the cash and gave me the opportunity to run it. And you don't ever forget that. You don't ever forget how you got started and where you came from.
You know, the guy it's in his DNA. He lives and breathes this. You know, that's all he thinks about. That's the only thing that really matters in his life. You know, if it's not UFC, he's not even thinking about it.
It doesn't tell me what to do, when to do it, what to say, how to say it. It doesn't tell me anything. Lets me be me and lets me do things the way that I want to do it since day one.
In just the past 4 years, the UFC has witnessed an explosion in its popularity. Thanks in no small part to fighters Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell, and Tito Ortiz, and more recently superstars like Anderson Silva, Brock Lesnar, and George St. Pierre, attendance has soared, with pay-per-view buys for live events often exceeding the 1 million mark in North America. As a result, the profitability and growth of the organization has skyrocketed as well. First came the purchase of fight organizations WEC and Pride, followed by title sponsorships with major corporations Anheuser-Busch and Harley-Davidson. All part of the plan to expand the UFC, not just on this continent, but around the globe. Then, in June of 2008, Dana would reveal to the world the big news. Lorenzo was leaving Station Casinos to join the UFC full-time.
You know, that was probably the only time I ever really got mad at Dana, when he made such a big deal out of it. I'm like, what are you doing? This doesn't make any sense.
But it made sense to Dana White. He no longer could do it alone.
It's funny, when I said I had a big announcement that he was leaving Station Casinos to come with UFC full-time, everybody was like, that was it? We thought you were, you know, signing this guy or signing that guy. But, you know, the fans don't understand. Listen, I was one guy there by myself literally for, you know, what was it, 8 years? And the fact that he was coming over full-time, he's always been involved and been a part of it, but to be there full-time and his main focus is 100% on our global strategy, I knew it was going to be big.
We literally had the whole world that we wanted to go out and extend the UFC brand to, you know, and Dana's doing his thing. He's doing PR, he's dealing with fighter issues, and you can't be everywhere at one time. So we felt like in order to really kind of move this thing a little bit quicker, it would make sense for me to spend, you know, not just 20% of my time, but 100% of my time over at the UFC.
Lorenzo's impact in this role has already been felt. Major TV deals have been signed internationally in countries like the UK, Japan, and Brazil, while the UFC has held an event in Germany, with Australia already on the schedule for next year. But despite the UFC's dominance in the MMA world, it's the competition from other organizations, like their newest adversary, Strikeforce, which continues to fuel Dana and Lorenzo's drive to remain the biggest and the very best.
We have a roadmap and a plan, and I will not, I'm like the Terminator, man, I will not stop until we get this mission done. And what motivates me is, be honest with you, seriously, people think it's, I get whatever and I'm anti-competition. I love when these guys come out and try to compete with us. That's the that gets me out of bed every morning, man.
You know, when the competition comes, I take it very seriously. He just takes it more emotionally than I do. You know, obviously I keep always very concerned about what the competition's doing. He just kind of, like you said, wears it on his sleeves. But, you know, maybe that's why we've had success, because it's a bit of a balance, you know. He's on one end of the spectrum, I'm on the other end of the spectrum, and we kind of meet in the middle, and things seem to be going pretty well.
Coming up.
Yeah, this your boy Kimbo Slice.
From street fighting legend to UFC fighter, get to know Kimbo Slice like you've never heard him before. When MMA Connected, presented by UltimateBet.net, continues.
All right, before we get started here, I don't know if any of you have noticed, there's 15 of you, not 16. Talk more about this guy than anybody ever. And coming from me, that's saying a lot. So let's bring number 16 in. What's up, Kimbo?
There's no doubt that on Saturday night against Houston Alexander, fans will see the ferocious side of Kimbo Slice. But here's an MMA Connected look at one of the most misunderstood figures the sport has ever seen.
Getting to know.
Yeah, this your boy Kimbo Slice. I'm years old. What's wrong with the volume? I said I'm years old. Well, anyway, this your boy Kimbo Slice.
Here he is, the one and only Kimbo
guy I've ever fought, and I'm still fighting him till this day, is myself. It's a mental battle. It's always a mental battle. If I wasn't an MMA fighter, I would still be a street fighter. When I'm not training or fighting, my favorite thing to do is spend time with my fat family. The only thing I'm afraid of, it ain't getting knocked out. You go figure.
Kimbo Slice!